Vince, hey, it's always good to spend time with you. I always feel like I learn so much from our conversations, and I always take inspiration from your very unique background. Obviously as a seller, as a sales leader, and then now what you do for the partner ecosystem for very large organizations and robust partner ecosystems. So, would love Vince, for you to tee up for the audience, just your unique background, and then would love to jump into some of your philosophies today.
Well, Carson, first of all, very kind of you. I look up to you as a sales leader. I have a very strong sales pedigree before getting into partnerships. And, I've described this career as 4, maybe more successful business transformations. And I carried a bag for many years. So I, walked the streets of Manhattan, carried a bag, grew with organizations. We took one organization from 6 million, 125 million, went public. And I grew in successive leadership roles as the company grew to VP of sales. And then when that company got sold, I did a turnaround and I was asked to start a new business division within this turnaround. Golden Gate Capital had spun us out. And so I started a new business sector. And by virtue of the fact that it was in the public sector, I needed partners. I needed contracts. I needed influence strategies. But I also recognized that selling was still the same, even in the government sector. People try to create this voodoo mystery around selling to the government. Well, it's not. I mean, it's all about people, right? It's all about people and solving big problems. And so I effectively use partners to help me get access to the right leaders and use the same effective selling techniques and strategies that I learned all through my career. And then after that successful exit, the company was acquired. We were the growth engine of that acquisition. I came over to Microsoft. I was recruited to come in and now for the first time in my career, I went from being a sales leader to being asked to run the partner business at Microsoft. And what I found is, certainly partnerships were super critical to success. I'd learned that before. But then working within the organization, what I found, I basically had to do a reboot on my organization because I found that people often went into the partner roles. It was sort of like the place to go if you didn't sell. And I looked at that very differently. And so I started recruiting top sales leaders from within Microsoft to join my team. And we changed that culture. We changed the team. And we were highly successful during a huge transition. Microsoft's move into the cloud. And so I got to work in the late Bomber days and the early Satya days over that almost 10-year stretch. And we grew that business to $4.6 billion across all of the public sector business. And then I left. I started a podcast. It was a fluke, right? So I started listening to podcasts. I loved the content. There were some great podcasts out there, but there weren't really great leadership podcasts around partnering. And I knew that I had worked with all these great organizations, these great partners, learned a ton from them. And then I also realized that a lot of those organizations still struggled with learning how Microsoft worked, the complexity of the organization, all the various terms and approaches, and what successful partners did better than the others. And so I thought I could help teach and at scale help a lot of these organizations to be effective. And that's where Ultimate Guide to Partnering started. I've been on the journey working with organizations now for 5.5 years. I went back inside for 2 years working for one of my clients. And I got to see on the inside of the organization how they struggled, a $1 billion plus company, how the leadership struggled around partnering. They said all the right things about it, but didn't recognize the level of commitment and maniacal focus that you needed to put at it. And so I left there during COVID. I wrote a manifesto around what made successful partnering. I wrote this, became a white paper. Microsoft published it as a blog post, what I refer to as the 7 principles of highly successful partnerships. And I can go through them and drain them for you today, but we'll talk about a lot of that. And then I also, along this journey, have seen why partnerships fail. And so I have what I describe as the 4 dysfunctions of partnerships, kind of taken a page out of Patrick Lencioni's playbook with the 5 dysfunctions of a team. But those are kind of operating principles and core to what I do, and excited to continue. I'm also excited that partnerships and ecosystems are getting a lot of renewed vitality in the space, in the SaaS software space, in the hyperscaler space. People are really recognizing now the importance of partnerships at a level I hadn't seen before in my career.
You articulated something so well, I might add there, Vince, too, around the commitment and maniacal focus that's required to really do this effectively. And it was an astute observation as well that you made around coming into a partner ecosystem and not really having a sales culture that was ingrained there. And so some of the life that I think you infused into that, I love the way you approach it. So I think there's a lot to unpack here. I think it's also it's cool to point out that, while you and I had a little bit of time that overlapped at Microsoft, that's not how we connected. We connected just because we became aware of what each other was doing from a LinkedIn and from a partnership ecosystem perspective. That's how we connected, turned it into a real relationship. You and I have broken bread and shaken hands. So I love the synergies here and just kind of your approach. I love how you can look back on your body of work and draw a lot of those key learnings, and then look forward to unpacking some of those today. I love the synergies with Menzione as well. My first book, Birth of a Salesman, was actually a parable-esque story about a fictional character who goes through experiences and then writes his own book. So very much draw from things of that nature, and I think that's what resonates with folks. But I'm very intrigued by this manifesto. So 7 principles of what makes a successful partnership. Would love to hear more about that, and I think that will be some good fodder for the next stage of our conversation here.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more about it. I break up the 7 principles, what I call the internal, and then the internal victory, and then the partnership victory, and I'll kind of go through that. But when you look internally at an organization, it all begins with mindset, right? We all know this amazing leader, Satya Nadella, and what he has done to Microsoft in terms of the company, bringing empathy into the room, applying a growth mindset. We all got a copy of the book Mindset by Carol Dweck when he joined the organization, and we started moving from this like fixed mindset, which was, I remember the bomber days. We were competing with everyone, and he said, no, we can form partnerships with all these organizations that we previously competed with, and we can find new ways to go about market. So he changed the mindset of the organization. And whether you call it a growth mindset, a forward-leaning mindset, an infinite mindset, as Simon Sinek refers to it as, getting mindset right is super critical in organizations, because a scarcity mentality is where organizations fail partnering, because scarcity mentality says there's only enough for me and not enough for you. And so partnering is not an intuitive thing in a scarcity mentality. So getting the mindset right is critical, and the mindset across the organization, right? Getting it across all of the leaders, the C-suite in an organization, up and down the organization, on the selling floor, getting that right partnership mindset right, critical to success. Otherwise, it's not really a true partnership. The next principle is about applying what I call extreme commitment. We talked about commitment, right? Extreme commitment to the partnership. And what I see from the best of the best partners are the ones that apply this commitment to the partnership strategy. Commitment shows up in many ways. It shows up with, I put partners first. I reward success with partnerships. I resource my partner strategy, both dollars, people. There's a seat at the table for the partner leader. A lot of organizations, partner leaders are like an appendage in an organization, right? They might report to the CRO, but they're like down here. They don't get the visibility in the organization. Extreme commitment means that I believe it's important, and I'm elevating the commitment of the organization to drive the right set of results around partnering. The third area, and I just wrote a little bit about this today, you can call it a why, you can call it a vision, you can call it there's a lot of different terms we could use for it, but it's getting the vision and value of the partnership right. When you lock, it's funny, like, we've worked together where I'm representing and working with a partner, and we're doing co-sellathons and things together. But like, you'll be down the path with some of these organizations, and even the ones that are the big ones that are working with Microsoft, and you get the leaders on both sides in the room, and you go, well, why are we here? Like, what is our long-term, like, what's the vision for this partnership? And when organizations can't articulate that, we don't really have a partnership. We have a transaction. So it's getting like the long-term focus, the why around the partnership right. And that is so critical. So you're driving the mindset, you're driving the commitment, you're getting the why right. And now you're ready to kind of go out and partner together, right? So what happens next? Well, I as a partner leader, I used to meet with partners all the time at Inspire and other events, and we'd have these great meetings and conversations, and we'd say all these great things. Oh, we're going to go drive X number of dollars of business. We're going to do this in the next year or two. That's great. And then we'd leave the meeting and crickets. Nothing would happen afterwards. So you got to apply maniacal focus. Like you have to say, okay, this is our why. We get this. What are our core objectives, our objectives and our key results that we're going to drive against? Who's accountable for it? Like, maybe we're going to do some co-marketing together. Maybe we're going to do co-selling together. Maybe we're going to do another thing together. Those three streams of opportunity areas need to be managed, and eyeballs need to visit that on a continual basis, maniacal focus to the execution of what we said we were going to go do. The other area is around brand and story. So I find that organizations that fail, partnering with you, with Microsoft, and even partnering with other organizations, two things they don't do. They don't do a really good job. They're not effective enough in their own digital strategy and marketing strategy. They've got to get better there. And then also branding both to their customers, but also branding back to the partnership, right? So what do you want to be known for? Like when a partner shows up and has a conversation with you, Carson, what do you know about them? Like partners need to show up with that. Like, these are the results I'm driving. Look what I've done. We just built a solution and we've deployed it, and this driven this amount of, in the case of Microsoft Azure consumption or some other, seed ads or whatever the metric is specifically to what they do. But showing up continually and doing that branding internally within the partner as well as to the customer, super important. And it's a weakness in many technology organizations, because a lot of tech companies, they have that old engineering mindset that says, I build the best mousetrap and people will, beat a path to my door kind of thing. And then the sixth principle, so I've got all these things right. Now it's about delivering the results. And that's where effective co-selling happens, right? That's where partners show up in meetings with you and other leaders, and we have a really effective conversation about what we're going to go do together. We each understand the role we play in this. We and I were talking about this earlier, about this strategy, and recognizing there are many different buying influences in the decision, and how can we affect the right outcomes across each of the people that are involved in the decision process. Doing that effectively is an art and a science. And so doing that right is important. And then so that's the partnership victory, right? Getting the brand and story right, delivering the results, applying the maniacal focus to it. And then the seventh principle, which is unique in itself, is about agility, right? I call it, that's around like a circle. Like, think about like it's going to change. Things are going to change. Microsoft is going to change its partner program. I just had Dan Rippey on the podcast talking about the new Microsoft Cloud partner program. A lot of change going on for partners. Yeah. Partners need to intuitively know or learn where the opportunities are, and pivot their organizations in a way that, and maybe make some micro investments. I like the term fail fast, right? Try new things out. Understand whether it's a new market, whether it's a new business opportunity, and go after that and be agile enough in order to change. Because if you're working with a large organization like Microsoft, or name the other big tech organizations, you need to understand where they're going. You need to align to priorities, and those things will change. But your business will prosper if you're agile in your approach. So 7 principles.
It's amazing, Vince. And you know what I love about each of these is, like, I think back over my experience with partnering, which was a new concept to me when I started working at Microsoft several years ago, because a lot of the work that I had done previously had been, as an individual contributor or as a sales leader with one dedicated product. And so it was a new concept to me. But what is very much at the foundation of just selling in general is we gotta stay at the pulse of those that we seek to serve. And in this case, like, one of the things that I always tell my team, like, partners might have the superior relationship that we seek to have. Like, partners can enable and empower us to win, just like we can do the same for them. And so I think the key is, for every scenario that you approach, we've got to get the right people in the boat. And the right people always include, like, the influencers of, both organizations, but also these key partners that are going to ultimately provide the solutions that get us across the threshold. Every one of them has their own unique niche. That's why I loved what you highlighted about branding. But real partnership, you nailed it about Satya's approach. It's looking at competitors, quote unquote, competitors
Yeah.
differently, and also looking at customers as partners. We became the great integrators.
Right.
We go to market with, we build with, we sell with. And it's not about competing or displacing anymore. It's about how do we integrate, augment, enhance, complement. Frankly, the best partnerships I've ever had too revolved around the people. In fact, I've had people that I've seen work at multiple different partners where that's where the relationship really gravitated. I knew that person was going to be a trusted partner. I knew that we were going to have mutual transparency, and then the accountability piece that you highlighted too. There's mutual accountability. How is everyone going to add value for each other? Do we have that mentality of seeking to serve each other? One of the biggest challenges that I think sometimes I see in ineffective partner relationships is we go to the table thinking like, what's in it for me, as opposed to how do I put this partner in a position to win, or how do we help each other to achieve goals, as opposed to what's in it for me. And so we got to look for ways to mutually deliver wins, create a community around what we do and what that story is that we want to tell. But at the end of the day, I mean, you really nailed it. And I think that kind of brings us naturally into the next point that you alluded to is, why do partnerships fail? I know you highlighted your four dysfunctions. I can't wait to hear them.
Well, you made some really great points, Carson. I don't want to leave some of those untouched, right? So one thing you said is customers are becoming partners, right? So every organization is becoming a tech organization in one form or fashion. It's exciting to see, actually. Those of us who've grown up in tech and took apart computers when I was young, getting to see the technology revolution that we're seeing. And so it's, again, partnering is even more important than ever because of those things. But some organizations just don't get it right. And I alluded to some of them in the principles, but mindset, again, I come back to that mindset conversation. Some organizations fail at partnering because they don't think of it as a team sport. They don't think of it as a team effort. They don't have empathy for the partnership. They think about it as a transaction. I like to call it the heroic salesperson worship that still exists in some organizations where an individual rings the bell, but there's a whole group of people standing behind that individual who are responsible for that, and partners, by the way, they're responsible for that sale.
Yes.
And having one person take credit for it. So that, like that status quo in the old business model, it's got to go. It's got to go. It's bad. It's bad for the culture. It ruins the culture of the organization. It erodes teamwork. It erodes partnerships and the like. And then the lack of commitment. So important here, right? I've seen a lot of leaders who pay platitudes towards partnering. Oh, we're going to partner. Well, I'm going to. They might say it to the board. They might say it to the street. And at the end of the day, when you go back into the room, there isn't that commitment, right? The chief financial officer is saying, why should I invest in this partner strategy? I could just hire more direct salespeople. Like the mindset isn't there either. The commitment and the mindset go hand in hand. I also find that organizations aren't deliberate enough in their execution. And I see this quite a bit with organizations, partners of various types, whether it be systems integrators or independent software vendors or even scale partners. They're not deliberate enough, and I say aggressive, but in a good way, in advancing their business model with and through Microsoft. Like, again, I go back to that whole branding exercise that says, did you know that we do this different? By the way, are you crystal clear about what you're doing? Like, don't have like 100 capabilities. What's the one thing that you do better? Like I equate working with Microsoft to being a shiny quarter in a bucket full of shiny quarters. So how do you stand out as that one shiny quarter in the bucket full of shiny quarters? When you're doing a co-sellathon meeting and you're meeting with these organizations, what's that one thing? So get your brands and stories straight. Get it right. Like we help you drive this. We help this customer outcome in healthcare. We're doing this differently than anybody else in the industry. And by the way, this is what our success looks like. Show up with the brag slide. Show up with the infographic that says, this is how much Azure consumption we drove. This is how many seed ads we drove. Those type of things are really critical. So being deliberate, but in a positive way in building your co-selling strategy. And then trust. trust is the fourth dysfunction, right? It's also in Lencione's book too, but trust, not trusting the other organization. Like trust is the oxygen into partnerships. Like if there's no trust in the room, there's no partnership. So trusting the other side, willing to share opportunities. You talked about people, right? Trust is so innate in people. And I love, by the way, I love Stephen Covey's work around. He was one of my favorites. I got to see him speak. I got to attend some seminars and sessions with his leadership, his people. But that, the whole concept of the emotional bank account and trust and all those things are just so critical to success in selling.
I think it's important what you pointed out around, look, this is full of quotables, Vince. That's what I love about it. Trust is the oxygen. When partnerships don't work, I think about a couple of key components that jump out to me. Number one, they're not transparent. We expect something, we expect an outcome, but we're not fueling that outcome by giving the partner what they need to know. Or on the flip side, if we're the partner, by bringing that other organization that we want to partner with along for the journey. We've got to make sure that we are very respectful of each other's positions. There's a lot of partners that I work with that are agnostic when it comes to who they partner with ultimately. So we've got to be respectful of those key relationships, but we've also got to seek to serve. That's the other element of this, right? We want something and then we expect it without giving anything or bringing anything to the table. Yeah. I can't just call a partner and say, oh, hey, I need you to do this or that, or, I expect more presence, or I expect more, seat at the table, or a better seat at the table for this conversation. It's not how it works. We've got to come to the table with value for that partnership. And that's exactly what you kind of outlined in the opening preamble. How do we show up and ultimately focus on the partnership? We've got to create genuine, authentic relationships. We've got to invest in them. We've got to nurture them. We need an environment where there's mutual accountability and we're staying true to the partnership. It's amazing to me. The best partnerships that I have, thinking back, are with individual people and then also with organizations where it's amazing how things happen over time, but you keep coming in contact with these same types of scenarios because great partners stay at the pulse of what matter to the people that they want to partner with, both customers and organizations.
And it starts at the top of the organization. That's why, so the mindset, the commitment, the leadership, the best partners I've worked with is when the CEO of the organization was the one who would show up at the Microsoft conference. They'd be in the room with Judson and Satya and all the other leaders in the organization. And it permeated down the organization, right? They set the tone in the partnership. So that, yeah, so many great points.
You said something else too that I think we want to stick on for a second, and it's when there's simply platitudes paid to it. It's one thing to talk about the value of it, but it's another to personify and embody that and to really put your money where your mouth is, showing what successful partnership looks like, modeling those behaviors. I spend a lot of time, with a team, and, there's a plethora of partners because they are enterprise customers that are always reaching out to our team, that are reaching out to our customers. And with that, I think sometimes the predisposition that some sellers may have is, oh, there's a lot of noise. I don't need this. I can do this, myself, or siloed, or with my own resources. We're better together. There is an element, obviously every partnership, I believe, was formed with a great, initial vision. And that's why it's up to that partnership to make sure that the vision comes to fruition, that we stay focused on that holistic view of what we want to do together. And don't get me wrong, there are some negative components of, some of the experiences that I think we've all had from a partnership perspective, but the ends justify the means. The pros outweigh the cons. It's one of those situations where if you look back, every great success story that I have involved usually multiple partners and as many key resources in the room as possible. I had a lot of fun in my individual contributor, cold calling days when I was the one ringing the bell. But I have a lot more fun, a lot more growth, a lot more learning, a lot more fulfillment when it's a very broad team involving lots of partners getting across the finish line together.
Yeah. I have a great example going back to the early days. We were selling rugged notebook computers. Our largest competitor was a Japanese company. And we were now trying to sell to the US military after 9/11. And I had no relationships like with military people, right? And I found this, I went to a meeting, all these colonels were in the room and they were talking about this one company that I had a meeting coming up with. And I was like, oh, they have the relationship. They have the trusted advisor relationship with all of these colonels that were making all these decisions. And that led to a lot of business because we were positioned now as the right solution for this military operation. And so, yeah, I mean, it's astounding, right? We can go it alone and try and do it alone, or we can go together and be more successful.
I can't tell you how many times as a seller I was unable to get into the customer key influencers that I wanted. But I found that there was a partner who had a better relationship, and I was able to invest in that partnership and ultimately got the outcome that I originally envisioned that I wanted. Just didn't look the way that I envisioned it. I thought I could or should get in and get that relationship, but somebody else had a better one. So I invested in that one to get the outcome I wanted. Similarly, where even with competitors, where there was a scenario, multiple scenarios in my past where we weren't the right solution. And I was able, because I was trying to earn trusted advisor status rather than just to sell something they didn't need or want, because that diminishes my credibility. I introduced them directly to somebody who was a competitor because that ultimately was the right decision. And guess what? That customer continued to do business with me because they knew that I would steer them properly as opposed to just trying to sell a widget. So I couldn't agree more. I think that's key around partnering.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to share with you too, I think about there are a lot of these technology organizations and they invest in the resources. They hire a Microsoft Alliance manager. But what I find, and this is why Ultimate Partnerships and the work that we do now, is that that person can't carry the flag alone. Like, why should we be? Because Microsoft asks a lot of its partners, right? There's a lot of reporting. There's a lot of investment. There's, a lot of showing up to co-sellathons and others. And a lot of times the organization on the backside of this alliance leader carrying the flag are not fully aligned. They're not aligned in the way against the mindset, the commitment. And so that's where we come in and we do these workshops, these masterminds, because we find if we can get the leaders in the room, and again, the alliance person carrying the flag, bring the team along. And we do these workshops. And if we can get the chief revenue officer, the chief marketing officer, the channel chief who's managing the downstream partners, the channel partners, get them all in the room to understand what the best do differently. And we kind of paint that picture. This is what the framework looks like across leadership, operations, co-marketing, and co-selling. They get that picture like, oh, that's what I need to go differently. This is how I accelerate. And so that's what we do at Ultimate Partnerships. We help those organizations, even if you're, and what I would say is, even if you're investing in an alliance leader, doesn't mean you have it all figured out yet. And it helps to have an organization that come along and help you accelerate your success. So that's where
I think the key is, like you said, Vince, first acknowledging and owning the power of the partnership, and then making sure that we're investing from a people and a process and a brand perspective. I understand as well, you've got an event coming up, and I'd love to hear more about that.
We're super excited about this. I talked about workshops. We've been doing all these workshops, and a lot of them we've been doing on Teams. And there was an opportunity, finally, there's an opportunity to get out in person more. And there was an opportunity to do something around a big Dynamics conference, one of the first, real live Microsoft not branded, but Microsoft type events. And so there's this big event, this Dynamics Community Summit that's going on in Orlando, Florida in October. And we're putting a 1.5-day workshop on the front end of that, October 9th and 10th. And we've got leaders from Microsoft. I've got Dan Rippey coming in to talk about the new partner program. I've got people like Pam Salzer and Diane Ishak coming in from the U.S. partner marketing team to talk about like what it takes to work and what are the success principles of marketing. And then we've got other amazing leaders from Microsoft coming in that day as well. And then the second day is kind of more workshop-y, right? We want it to be an intimate dialogue with these organizations that are coming in, and we're gonna take it across from leadership to operations to co-marketing and co-selling. And then there's gonna be a lot of Dynamics partners, so we're gonna cover off on some of the Dynamics partnership principles as well. So we're super excited about this. We're almost sold out. In fact, we might be sold out by the time this airs. But I would love people to take a look. I'll provide a link for you in our show notes around this mastermind. It's called the Ultimate Partnerships Mastermind. And we're hoping to do more of these. We're also going to be building community around this. So the plan is these organizations don't necessarily have a watering hole they can go to experience share, to learn from others that are like them, what the best do better, how do I work with Carson's organization more effectively or across other organizations at Microsoft. So we're going to create that community here as well. So we're super excited about it.
Very amazing. Well, I'm going to do everyone a service, and I'm going to try to publish this as quickly as possible. So hopefully we can get a few additional folks into the room with you and your team during that time. Sounds like an amazing, impactful event. And I think we've done a really phenomenal job today of highlighting some of the keys to successful partnerships, some of the missteps to avoid. Anything else that you would want to enunciate, Vince, before we sign off today? This has been great.
I would just say keep partnerships. This is a time, what I would say is that this time is unique. We have seen in the last 2.5 years an acceleration like we've never seen before. What we learned from the pandemic is we kind of crossed the chasm, right? Buying behaviors. I can click on this 3 times and a box shows up at the end of the day. And I do that every day now. I don't just do it once in a while. Learning has changed. Healthcare, telemedicine, right? We're up to like 50% on telemedicine. We weren't there a couple of years ago. Everything is changing. And partnerships are even more critical than ever to success because, as you said, every company is becoming a technology organization. And we as leaders have this opportunity to lead during this time, which is exciting. And so think about partnerships, think about how to form the right partnerships. If you need more information, want to learn more, reach out to me. I'm happy to have a dialogue with anyone along the way and help them on. So.
Amazing. And I will tell you, for anybody watching, that's a phenomenal offer. You should definitely take Vince up on that. Vince, this has been amazing. Thank you, as always, for the time and really just articulating some of your key learnings. I couldn't have said it better myself. The transformation is real. The change of all of these experiences, everything that we do from shopping to healthcare is all going to change, but what stays constant is the power of and importance of relationships and partnering. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.